The reason for today's video is the release of my friend Lev Pevzner's book in English called Microstandards of Thinking. And secondly, the subtitle is Tris Tools in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Lev is a renowned specialist in the theory of inventive problem solving, a candidate of technical sciences, and a Tris master. I believe there are fewer than 100 Tris masters worldwide. Lev developed a system of microstandards of thinking for solving various inventive and creative problems in engineering, business, and socio-psychological situations. But what are microstandards? I'll explain now, and then I'll tell you some funny stories from his book. They say that all actors perform using clichés. A good actor differs from a bad one in that a bad actor has 4 clichés, while a good one has 400. A cliché in a profession is an analogy that a person uses so as not to solve a problem from scratch, but to use previous experience and, as they say, apply it to a new situation. It's the same in invention and creativity. The more different standard situations a person knows, the faster he can find a solution by analogy with one of those situations, his own experience, or even several. What I liked most about Lev's book is how to use inventiveness to solve the problems that we face. That's why I picked out a few wonderful stories from this book to share with you, and if you like them, you're welcome to check out the link to his book in the description. The only thing is, the book is in English, so to read it, you need to at least be able to read in English. Well, let's get started. The first story is called Free is Better Than Cheap. Strange, right? Yes, that's the kind of story Lev tells, one of the public organizations for the protection of pensioners' rights in the U.S. They suggested that lawyers set discounted prices for elderly people. Seniors, right? Those who are over 65 years old, with the standard lawyer rate being $150 to $300 per hour. They suggested offering these services to seniors for $30 an hour, right? Well, the response from all the organizations they approached was unanimous. Well, no. There you go. Then the association changed their tactics. They sent out letters again, but this time they presented their offer like this. Can you help by providing free consultations to these poor, low-income elderly people? Something happened that initially seemed unexpected. A significant number of lawyers agreed. Well, where's the logic in that, you might ask? Why did the lawyers refuse to receive, say, $30 but agree to work for free? Huh? And psychologists will say, well, nothing surprising. It's all already written in our textbooks. The reason is that a person functions in 2 measurement systems. One is market-based, the other is social. In the market system, a person's behavior is determined by benefit. For example, if you buy something or go to get a job, the main factor in making a decision here is the price, the cost. It shows how much the product costs and whether you are willing to accept that price, or how much others value you, and whether you agreed with that assessment. It's completely different. You behave differently in the social sphere. There you function according to social norms. It's a time for morality. We hold the door so that someone can pass through comfortably, and their gratitude is enough for us? Yes, we give up our seat to an elderly lady on the bus without expecting, well, that she'll give us a quarter or something. But such actions boost our self-esteem. They show us that we are behaving according to the morals accepted in society. That's exactly how the lawyers behaved in this case. They were ready to work at the usual rate, or help for free, out of compassion. But they were categorically against working for $30 an hour because, well, I'm worth $300, not $30, right? If you can't afford to pay for work at market rates, then the solution might be to move the work into the social sphere, where the work is done for free, based on moral or socially significant motives. So a person works either for money, market conditions, or for social reasons. If you name a price, you put the person in a market situation, which radically changes their behavior and decision-making. If you don't pay a person anything, you put them in a socially significant situation. Often this turns out to be more beneficial than putting them in a market situation by offering low pay, which insults them. The story or tale that Elva starts is called Myself, and there's an exclamation mark at the end. American culinary culture began to take shape somewhere in the 1930s. And by the middle of the century, it reached its peak as a cuisine mainly of convenience foods and the use of canned goods. American food is quite tasty, but most importantly, it matches the spirit of the times. It's fast, it's dynamic, it's not pretentious. It doesn't cause trouble when preparing it. One of the trends was dry baking mixes. These are ready-made mixes for muffins. But cooks encountered an unpleasant surprise. Housewives refused to buy ready-made muffin mixes. Why? They were convenient, quick to prepare, and required no effort. Just add water and put it in the oven. So why weren't sales taking off? Why did housewives refuse to buy them? Psychologists found the answer. The mix was too simple. Too simple. It was a mix that deprived the housewife of the opportunity for creativity. She didn't feel like the creator of the dish. The cakes didn't have her taste, her individuality. Understanding is half the solution. The cooks offered a semi-finished product and gave the housewives recommendations. They could add spices, flavorings, and seasonings themselves, which made their cakes unique, and sales took off. To boost cupcake sales, you need to add creativity to make people want to buy them. It's possible to choose the details yourself and create your own unique version of the product, which you'll call your signature dish. Another story I liked was called "Nothing is More Permanent Than Something Temporary." What unites three pearls of world architecture? Pearls, I'm joking. The Eiffel Tower. Also the Pompidou Cultural Center and the London Eye. You might laugh for a long time, but they were considered temporary at the time of their construction. The story of the Eiffel Tower is well known. After winning the competition to create an architectural structure as the central object of the 1889 World's Fair dedicated to the centenary of the French Revolution, Gustave Eiffel faced fierce opposition and rejection of the project. Most Parisians believed that the tower would ruin the architecture of Paris. To promote his project, Eiffel agreed to a compromise. Let's consider the tower a temporary structure, which he would have the right to own for 20 years, that is, until 1909. After that, all rights would pass to the Paris municipality, including the right to dismantle the tower. And the municipality said, "We will dismantle the tower. We're just putting it up temporarily." And it must be said that the fears of dismantling were quite real. In 1903, the issue of its demolition was seriously considered, since the Paris City Hall wanted to reconstruct the Champ de Mars. And then Eiffel initiated, financed, and promoted all the scientific experiments conducted on the tower: meteorological observations, wireless telegraphy, and the aerodynamics of falling bodies. And in 1903, Captain Gustave Ferrier, with the support of Eiffel, installed a military wireless telegraph station. The technology was rapidly developing in those years. The range of the TSF signals expanded every year, and the strategic importance of the station on the Eiffel Tower became obvious as soon as it gained the ability to transmit and receive signals over long distances. So, on January 1, 1910, the concession granted to Eiffel was extended for another 70 years. The Eiffel Tower was saved. After that, several surveys were conducted regarding whether Parisians wanted to remove or keep the Eiffel Tower. Approximately 0 Parisians said to remove it. No one questions it anymore, they've gotten used to it. Well, actually, the same thing happened with the other 2 objects, so to speak. All right, let's not talk about it anymore. Here's another funny story called "Taking It to the Absurd." It happened in the summer, I think, of 2014, probably, something like that, in the small American town of Bregues, where the famous American artist Rockwell Kent settled. He had a quick temper, and once during a trivial argument with his neighbor, Kent insulted him and even almost said, "I'll kill you," or something like that. Well, it was all said in the heat of the moment. People say all sorts of things when they're angry. I don't know. But the spiteful pharmacist, as they say, decided to take revenge. He filed a lawsuit for insult and threat of murder. Well, maybe he really thought Kent was capable of it. The situation was turning out to be extremely unfavorable for Kent. The pharmacist was also a member of the court, so to speak, so he was well known in the city. And the quarrel was public, and there were quite a few witnesses, so Kent couldn't take back his words under oath. Everything depended on how seriously his threat of murder could be taken, whether it was said just like that or if it was a real threat. If the judge considers the threats to be real, well, the sentence could be quite long. In court, Judge Thompson put Kent under oath and began asking questions. You are accused of using threatening language toward the plaintiff. Is that true? No use denying it. Yes, Your Honor. What words did you use? I spoke. Here Kent got carried away and said about 10 times more than he actually did. You low, dirty, sneaky coward, dirty dog, crawling scoundrel. Crawling. Mr. Thompson is crawling, nasty, disgusting, stinky. I told him he was a snake. Stygian. Mr. Thompson is a monster, a spawn of hell. Laughter began to break out in the courtroom. The judge interrupts. What else did you say? Kent says, was I teasing him? Boo, boo, then meow, then woof. The courtroom is just laughing. Finally, the judge asks the main question, on which the outcome of the trial depends. The plaintiff stated that you threatened to kill him. Is that true? A tense silence fell over the courtroom. You can't deny it. There are witnesses. Yes, Your Honor, said Kent. It's true. I threatened to kill him and eat him. The courtroom erupted in laughter. The judge could barely hold back his laughter and tried to hide his smile. Then he said, You are found guilty and sentenced to a $5 fine. Well, that's like, what, $150 an hour probably, right? That's how the story about the attack on the pharmacist ended, or could have ended. If you've made a mistake and it's unpleasant to admit it, but you can't deny it, you should admit it, taking your admission to the point of absurdity with some obviously ridiculous extra details. After that, the admitted fact will lose its force and won't be taken seriously. There was an example, by the way, a very funny one. In 1758, Montezet became the Archbishop of Lyon. That means he was a skillful politician. Well, like every politician of that time, so to speak. Of course, politicians like that don't exist in our time. He had some sins attributed to him. They could have easily ruined him in the eyes of his superior, so to speak, Bishop Boann, and in the eyes of the public. Then he started, being very smart, to write anonymous denunciations about himself, full of absurd, slanderous fabrications, and send them to the bishop. The bishop calls him in and says, What is this? He says, Monsignor, I have many enemies. As a result, when Boann started receiving anonymous letters with true accusations against Montaz, he didn't pay any attention to them, because what was written there was 20 times less and, so to speak, much lighter things than what he had received before. There's another example. In the 1990s, the plant that produced titanium found itself in a difficult situation. It had large, unnecessary stocks of titanium, but no money to pay the workers' salaries. The director wanted to sell the titanium and pay the salaries, but titanium was a strategic material, and selling it as raw material was prohibited. The director found a workaround. Shovels were made from the titanium. For products, you don't have to specify what they're made of. And they were sold abroad for good money. By the way, one more thing. Strange things were done with the titanium. They revolved around a company that exported reproductions of antique furniture. They weren't in high demand, and according to the documents, they were unprofitable. But the company stubbornly kept exporting sofas with beautiful upholstery fabric, decorated with gold upholstery nails. The trick was exactly in the nails. They were gold. And with each sofa, up to 1.5 kilograms of smuggled gold was sent abroad. There, the nails were replaced with regular decorative ones. The gold was transported, sold, and the furniture was sold. Whatever they give, that's what we get. It doesn't matter to us anymore for how much, for however much they buy it from us. Well, all right, let's move towards the end. Maybe a couple more stories. Creating critical conditions. In 1968, an unknown person committed the largest robbery in the history of Japan. Almost 300 million yen was stolen. It happened in broad daylight without the use of weapons. A man dressed in a police uniform stopped a car that was carrying salaries for Toyota factory workers. He told the guards that the police had received information that the car was rigged with explosives. It needed to be inspected immediately. Naturally, they all got out of the car. They stepped back half a step. He climbed in here and there. Suddenly he shouted, "Run! Everything is about to explode." The guards ran away in a panic. and the man quickly got behind the wheel and drove off. They couldn't catch him. And the crime still hasn't been solved. If restrictions prevent you from taking the required actions, create a crisis situation where all restrictions and obstacles are removed, opening the way to the desired solution. Well, I guess that's the last one, right? Lev calls this hinting without saying it outright. That's a funny story. The House of Lords of the English Parliament is famous for its exquisite politeness. Outbursts and rudeness towards an opponent are absolutely unacceptable. But how do you do that? The insult must be spoken out loud. You really want to, but without breaking the rules of conduct in the House of Lords chamber. And so it started like this. One of the lords addressed the speaker and said, "Sir, do the rules of our chamber allow me to call Lord Wellington a disgusting fat pig?" "No," he says. So the chairman, the speaker of the chamber, "You cannot call Lord Wellington a disgusting fat pig." "In that case," says the Lord, "I am forced to give up my desire to call Lord Wellington a disgusting fat pig, although I really want to do it." Huh. Oh dear. So, well, gentlemen, if there is a serious suspicion about the honest or dishonest behavior of an opponent, but there is not enough evidence for a direct accusation, then publicly you can only talk about verifiable facts, confirmed data, and suspicions should be formulated as questions or doubts, which can serve as grounds for verification and investigation. At the same time, it is preferable not to mention names, but to make it clear in general terms who is being discussed. Sometimes you can strongly recommend that your opponent not do what you actually want them to do, but do it in the form of a negation. Please don't do this. That's what we want to remember. During Trump's first presidential term, large caravans of illegal migrants were coming from Central American countries, but who was financing them could only be guessed. There was no direct evidence, but there was a strong desire for everyone to know who it was. However, direct accusations could have led to charges of slander, and then Trump said that someone financed the movement of the migrant caravans. He didn't mention a name, but he said he wouldn't be surprised if financier George Soros was behind it. Well, with such a statement, it's impossible to prosecute Trump for defamation, right? Well, he wouldn't be surprised, but he didn't accuse anyone. On this positive note, I want to end today's meeting, and in the description, I'll provide links on how to purchase Lev Pevzner's book on Amazon in Russian. No, in English. Or maybe it's available in Russian. Take a look. All the links will be there. For your friends who can't read in Russian or English, by the way, you see, I started telling you something, but I haven't checked everything myself. Yes, well, it would be great if it's available in both Russian and English. Goodbye.